Welcome back to Study Hall. Where we take your curiosity and we turn it into a crash course on just about anything. And today,
I like that.
we are tackling a figure
Yeah.
so outlandish, so dreamlike, you might think he crawled out of one of his own paintings.
Ooh.
Salvador Dalí.
Salvador Dalí. What's fascinating about Dalí is that he wasn't just a painter.
Right.
He was a showman, a provocateur, and a master of tapping into the subconscious.
Yes.
We're talking melting clocks, lobster phone, and a mustache that could defy gravity.
You heard right. We're diving deep into the world of Salvador Dalí. And you've mentioned you're curious about art, but maybe don't have a PhD in art history.
Right.
No worries.
Yeah.
That's where we come in.
Exactly.
Think of this as your cheat sheet to understanding one of art's biggest enigmas.
Absolutely.
And we're using excerpts from an essay titled Salvador Dalí, A Life in Art.
Great essay.
And trust me, this essay does not disappoint.
Really good stuff.
It's juicy.
Yeah, we'll uncover how Dalí's personal experiences from his childhood in Spain to his wild ride with the surrealists in Paris shaped those iconic, sometimes bizarre images we know and love.
Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. We're talking about the man who claimed to be the reincarnation of his dead brother.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine growing up with that kind of pressure.
It's true. Dalí believed he was his older brother who tragically died before Dalí was born.
Wow.
This, coupled with his parents' encouragement, nurtured an almost superhuman level of ambition and artistic drive in him.
So right from the start, there's this sense of destiny, this weight of expectation on his little shoulders.
Absolutely. And the environment where he grew up only amplified that feeling. Picture this figure's Spain in the Catalan region.
Okay.
Rugged landscapes, vibrant culture, a place steeped in history and myth.
I'm there.
It all seeped into his work. You can practically see the windswept cliffs and sun-drenched fields in his later paintings.
Okay, so we've got a reincarnated prodigy with a dramatic backdrop.
Yeah.
What happens next? This kid's got to be painting masterpieces in diapers, right?
Not quite diapers, but close.
Okay.
He started art lessons at the Municipal Drawing School and held his first public exhibition at the ripe old age of 14.
14. I was mastering the art of doodling in my textbooks at 14.
Yeah.
This guy was already exhibiting.
Right. But as you might imagine, someone this gifted, this convinced of his own uniqueness, might also have a touch of, let's call it, rebellious spirit.
Oh, I'm sensing a good story here.
Yeah.
Did he pull a paint bomb prank on a rival artist?
Even better, he ended up at the San Fernando Academy of Fine Arts in Madrid. Think Harvard for art students in Spain.
Sounds prestigious. He must have loved it, right?
At first, he soaked up everything, experimenting with different styles, Impressionism, Cubism, even rocking the long hair and dapper clothes that would become his signature look.
So even back then, he was a trendsetter.
But remember that rebellious streak? Well, Dalí declared none of his teachers were good enough to examine him and got himself expelled right before graduation.
Oh, no.
Confidence, or maybe just a bit of crazy...
Wow. You decide.
Bold move. So he ditches art school. What next? Starving artist in a Parisian garret.
Not quite before the Academy drama. He met some pretty influential figures in Madrid filmmaker Luis Buñuel and poet Federico Garcia Lorca.
Okay.
This wasn't just any poetry slam. These guys were giants in their fields.
Whoa, now that's networking. Talk about a creative power squad.
It was a meeting of minds obsessed with pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo. Imagine those late-night conversations.
Yeah, so was this where Dalí's fascination with the subconscious, with all things strange and dreamlike, really began?
He devoured Sigmund Freud's theories on dreams, and the unconscious and those ideas became the bedrock of his art.
Okay.
I think those melting clocks, those bizarre juxtapositions of objects, it all goes back to Freud.
So he was basically saying, forget landscapes, I'm painting the inside of my brain.
And he had a method to this madness, the paranoiac-critical method. More on that later, but just know it involved deliberately accessing irrational thoughts and translating them into art. So he's intentionally making himself a little bit crazy to fuel his creativity.
Got it. Precisely. And with that mindset, he began to solidify his signature surrealist style. But where better to perfect surrealism than in the City of Lights itself?
Paris, home of croissants romance and apparently the surrealist movement.
In 1929, Dalí officially joined the surrealist group led by the famously opinionated André Breton.
Okay.
Now picture this Dalí with his flamboyant personality and mind-bending art joins a group of artists already known for pushing boundaries.
Talk about a recipe for creative chaos.
Absolutely. But before the inevitable fireworks started, Dalí had one more fateful encounter.
No.
He met Gala Eluard, who became his muse, his business manager, and his wife.
Wow.
Think Yoko Ono, but with even more influence over her artists.
Gala. The woman who stole Dali's heart and maybe helped him conquer the art world.
She was a force to be reckoned with, a shrewd businesswoman who understood how to market Dali's genius without her. He might have just been another starving artist.
So 1929 was a huge year for Dalí. He joins the Surrealists, meets Gala, and has his first solo exhibition in Paris.
Right. That exhibition at the Gumins Gallery was a success, establishing him as a major name in Surrealism. It was during this period that some of his most iconic pieces emerged, like The Persistence of Memory with those melting clocks.
I've seen that one on everything, from T-shirts to coffee mugs.
And The Great Masturbator from the same year is equally fascinating, though. Maybe not appropriate for coffee mugs.
Yeah, Dalí was never one for subtlety.
Not at all. Sexuality, the subconscious, the distortion of reality. These became his artistic obsessions, and that's what we'll unpack next. Get ready to delve into the mind of Salvador Dalí, where melting clocks are just the tip of the iceberg.
All right, we've laid the groundwork: a reincarnated prodigy, a rebellious art student, a whirlwind romance, and a one-way ticket to the heart of the Surrealist movement.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But what about the art itself? What's going on in those canvases filled with melting clocks and laughter phones?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Imagine stepping into a Dalí painting. Right. You'd be surrounded by familiar objects, but twisted, distorted, reimagined in a way that makes you question your own sanity.
Kind of like walking through a fever dream, right?
Yeah.
But you're saying there's a method to this madness.
Absolutely. Dalí wasn't just throwing paint at a canvas. He was a master of symbolism, using everyday objects to represent complex ideas and emotions.
So those famous melting clocks in The Persistence of Memory, it's not just random weirdness.
Not at all. Remember how Dalí was obsessed with the concept of time and maybe a tad fixated on his own mortality? Those melting clocks are a visual representation of that anxiety. Time is literally slipping away, becoming distorted and fluid, just like our memories.
Okay, that makes sense. Time definitely feels more fluid and less reliable the older I get. Suddenly, years are flying by like minutes.
Exactly. And Dalí, being a bit of a hypochondriac, was hyper-aware of time's passage and the inevitability of death. He wasn't afraid to confront those fears head-on, even if it meant turning clocks into gooey messes.
So he's taking something abstract like the concept of time and making it tangible, something we can actually see and feel.
Precisely. And he does this with other symbols, too.
Okay, like what?
Ants, for example, they often pop up in his work, representing decay and the impermanence of life.
Really?
Think about it. Ants are tiny but relentless. They break things down. They're a constant reminder of the cycle of life and death.
You're right now that you mention it. I do remember seeing those creepy crawlies in a few of his paintings.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd be analyzing the deeper meaning of ants in art.
Well, that's the beauty of Dalí. He makes you think about the ordinary in extraordinary ways.
Okay.
And then there are the eggs, which symbolize hope and new beginnings, a kind of counterpoint to the decay represented by the ants.
Okay.
And crutches, which represent the fragility of human existence, always in danger of collapsing.
Wow. So even the smallest details in his paintings are packed with meaning. It's like a visual treasure hunt.
And let's not forget about his incredible technique. Dalí was a master craftsman.
Right. He was inspired by the old masters, those Renaissance guys who painted with such precision and detail. He could render reality perfectly, but he chose to paint his dreams instead.
That's like he's saying, look, I can paint a bowl of fruit like a boss, but that's boring. I'd rather paint a lobster with a telephone for a tail.
Exactly. He took that technical mastery and applied it to the most surreal and unexpected subjects. It's this crazy juxtaposition of precision and absurdity that makes his work so captivating.
You mentioned earlier that Dalí was fascinated by science. How did that play out in his art?
Imagine living in a time when the atom was being split. Quantum mechanics was blowing everyone's minds, and the structure of DNA was being unraveled. This was a time of radical scientific discovery, and Dalí, being the forward-thinking guy, he was absorbed these ideas and translated them onto his canvases.
It was like the world was suddenly a much stranger and more complex place than anyone had imagined.
Precisely, and Dalí's art reflects that sense of wonder and uncertainty.
The disintegration of the persistence of memory is a great example.
Right.
It's like a sequel to his melting clocks painting. But this time, everything is fragmented, breaking apart at the atomic level.
So he's visualizing those groundbreaking scientific discoveries, showing how our perception of reality was shifting.
Exactly. And then there's galacida-desoxyribonucleic acid. Yeah, I know. Try saying that 5 times fast.
Seriously, that title needs its own zip code.
I know.
But it does sound very science-y.
It is. It's all about his fascination with DNA. He even combines religious imagery with the double helix structure, showing this unexpected connection between science, spirituality, and art. Remember, this was a time when people were grappling with the implications of these discoveries.
Right.
Was science replacing religion?
Yeah.
Were we on the verge of unlocking the secrets of life itself?
Yeah.
Dalí was wrestling with these questions in his art.
It's incredible how he could weave together these seemingly disparate elements, science, religion, pop culture, and create something so unique and thought-provoking. It's not just pretty pictures, it's about the big questions, the fundamental mysteries of existence.
And that exploration takes on an even deeper, more spiritual dimension in his later works.
Wait, there's more? I thought melting clocks and lobster phones were as deep as it got.
Oh, there's always more with Dalí. Buckle up, because we're about to explore the spiritual side of surrealism, where religion, mysticism, and maybe a few more anxieties come into play.
Okay, my brain is officially melting. We've gone from melting clocks to creepy crawlies to the secrets of DNA.
Right.
And now we're talking about the spiritual side of Dalí.
Yeah.
I am intrigued, but also slightly terrified.
Well, remember, Dalí was raised Catholic. That religious background never really went away, even during his wildest surrealist years. It's like all that early religious imagery and symbolism was simmering beneath the surface, just waiting for the right moment to erupt.
So what triggered that eruption? Did he have some kind of divine revelation amidst a pile of melting clocks?
Maybe not a divine revelation, but there's definitely a shift in his work starting in the 1940s and 50s. World War II had a profound impact on many artists, and Dalí was no exception. He began to grapple with questions of faith, mortality, and the human condition in even deeper ways.
So it wasn't just about shocking people anymore.
Right.
He was searching for something more.
Exactly. Those earlier themes of sexuality and the subconscious were still there, but they became intertwined with these new spiritual explorations.
Yeah.
The Sacrament of the Last Supper is a perfect example. It's a classic biblical scene, but set in this surreal, almost otherworldly landscape. Christ and his disciples are practically glowing with an ethereal light, like they're transcending the physical realm.
And then there's crucifixion, corpus hypercubus,
Yes.
which is just mind-blowing.
Right, you got Christ on a hypercube, a four-dimensional object. It's like Dalí's trying to visualize the intersection of the divine and the earthly, the spiritual and the scientific.
So even in his spiritual phase, he's still pushing boundaries, still challenging our perceptions of reality. He's just using different tools now.
Precisely. But let's be honest with Dalí. There were always challenges, always controversies.
Right.
It wasn't all just painting and pondering the mysteries of the universe.
Right, we talked about his falling out with the surrealists, his strained relationship with his father, and his complicated dynamic with Gala.
And let's not forget the accusations that he was more interested in fame and fortune than in creating true art. He designed advertisements, collaborated on jewelry, even worked with Walt Disney on an animated short film.
Wait, Dalí and Disney now, that's a collaboration I'd love to see.
It's called Destino, and it's a surreal fever dream, just like you'd expect. But back then, many in the art world saw those commercial ventures as selling out.
I guess in those days, a true artist wasn't supposed to make money.
Right.
But Dalí didn't care about those rules, did he?
Nope, he was a master of self-promotion, a showman who understood the power of image and branding long before Instagram was a thing.
He was like the original influencer.
Exactly. He knew how to create a spectacle, how to keep people talking. But beyond the theatrics, his talent was undeniable. He could paint with incredible precision. He understood composition and color, and he had this uncanny ability to tap into the subconscious and bring it to life on canvas.
So what's the final verdict on Dalí's legacy? Was he a genius, a madman, or a bit of both?
Maybe all of the above. He was a complex figure full of contradictions, but one thing's for sure, he left an undeniable mark on the art world, and beyond, he helped popularize. Surrealism influenced countless other artists, and his imagery continues to pop up everywhere, from museum walls to coffee mugs.
You know, for someone who is so obsessed with time and mortality, he did a pretty good job of achieving a kind of artistic immortality.
He did, and it's not just his art that endures. It's the way he challenged conventions, pushed boundaries, and made us question everything we thought we knew about reality.
So for anyone listening who's curious about art, who's drawn to the strange and the surreal, Dalí is definitely worth exploring.
Absolutely. His work is a window into a mind that was both brilliant and troubled, and it offers a unique perspective on the world and the human experience.
And who knows, maybe exploring Dalí will spark your own creative fire, inspire you to see the world in a new light, or at the very least, make you appreciate the power of a well-placed mustache.
Yeah.
It's been a wild ride through the life and work of Salvador Dalí.
It has.
But the journey doesn't have to end here. Dalí once said, "The only difference between me and a madman is that I am not mad." But what do you think? Where does genius end and madness begin? Something to ponder as you dive deeper into the mind-bending world of Salvador Dalí. Thanks for joining us in Study Hall.
Hey,